whoever he perceived as a threat to Amelia, George would try to hound them into ground.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Inside the Cockpit, streaming here on Queen City News Plus. I'm your host, May K. Beeler, also the chief transportation correspondent here at Queen City News. Now, many of you know that I'm a pilot of over 40 years. I've flown 30 different makes and models of aircraft, so I love all things flying. And that's what Inside the Cockpit is all about. So today, we're going to talk about America's favorite missing person, Amelia Earhart, and a remarkable reward-winning journalist who has just released a book about everything you could possibly want to know about Amelia and her personal life. So just to remind everybody, it was 88 years ago that the legendary pilot and her navigator Fred Noonan went missing over the Pacific Ocean. Well, their disappearance is considered, of course, one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. So Amelia vanished toward the end of her attempt to become the first woman to fly around the world. She was already a well-known record-breaking pilot, author, fashionista, and women's rights advocate before her final flight. You know, she was so popular in the 1930s, her fame and admiration made her the Taylor Swift of her day. All right, so for those of us who are still scratching our heads, wondering what ever happened to Amelia, and really, what was her personal life like leading up to that final flight? So author Lori Gwen Shapiro joins us now to talk about her new book, The Aviator and the Showman, Amelia Earhart, George Putnam, and the Marriage That Made an American Icon. Lori, welcome in.
I'm so excited. I am actually speaking to this audience from Amelia's hometown of Atchison, Kansas. I'm a native New Yorker, and I launched my book on July 15th in New York, and I immediately flew to Kansas, and I'm going to be here for the Amelia Earhart Festival and then touring all over the country because everyone loves Amelia Earhart.
Oh, we love Amelia Earhart, especially being a female pilot. I'll just tell you that the 99s Incorporated, we're the International Organization of Women Pilots. I've been a member for over 40 years. We're 6,000 strong worldwide. Amelia was our founder in 1929. So you and me and most women, we all just have an affinity for Amelia Earhart, especially those in aviation. So so much to talk about. Let me brag about you for a minute.
Okay.
Lori, of course, you are a best-selling author, journalist, NYU professor, award-winning documentary, filmmaker, exploring lost history, art, and exploration. You've written for The New Yorker, The New York Times, and more. So lots of praise for your book, and I am so excited. I'm going to order it tonight. One review says, Shapiro strips away the myths and reveals something far more profound and intricate and true. Lori, I can't wait to hear. Tell us now, why Amelia? What motivated you to write this book?
Well, like many people, Amelia was a childhood hero of mine. I tell people that the very first biography I ever read was one from the Scholastic book fair, which, a child's biography of Amelia Earhart. I didn't think much more about her other than wasn't she the world's greatest female pilot? And she was an inspiration. And later on, as I started to write nonfiction, I started to understand that there was a more nuance to life. And I think that we don't get heroes nuance, we get iconic versions. And so when I began this book, I didn't have an agenda. I hoped that she was going to be a good person. Spoiler, she was.
Good.
But at the same time, I didn't know what I was going to find. And I did find a lot of new things that otherwise you're not going to have a book deal, right?
Right.
But I wanted to give a true portrait. My bias, if there's anyone, is journalism. Let me just fact check the heck out of anything I'm doing in my book, which reads in a narrative way. It's narrative nonfiction. If there are any David Grand fans or The Wager or that kind of writing, but at the same time, at the back of the book, there are the receipts. Where did this come from? And there's also over 64 photos, many of them never seen by the public before, because I wanted to back up photographically what I was saying as well.
So let me say that was a question. I know it says nonfiction, but I wanted to make sure the book wasn't just inspired by or based on a true story. So
No.
you
I mean,
you
the book is with Viking Random House, and so I had to make it through several hurdles.
sure.
You can have a nonfiction label on your book if you're making it up. So first you get fact checked by the publisher if it's a good publisher. I had a tremendous excerpt. I was very honored in the New Yorker
Yes.
a few weeks before the book came out, and that was 14 hours a day with two fact checkers over just 7,000 words, not the whole book. I mean, and everything made it through. I am a professor. I'm an adjunct professor at NYU in journalism, and I teach how to fact check. I am not a historian who's spent my whole life on Amelia Earhart, but I have spent the last 5 years
Wow.
on this story.
I was going to ask how many years. What was the research like? And did you go places and find information that isn't really available elsewhere?
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of the excitement. When you write a nonfiction book, you get money in the beginning. Unlike a novel where you have to finish the whole thing, you write a proposal, you do a chapter, and then you just hope that somebody's going to say yes. And they give you half the money or a third of the money, and you can live on that money and go do your research. And I did that right away. I sold this in November 2019. Fortunately, that was right before the pandemic, and I got some of my research done right away. Most of the existing Amelia archives are in Indiana at Purdue University and at Harvard, but those collections have been picked over, and I did go there. And then I started to try to find new ways in, and I was interviewing people that hadn't been interviewed. I found archives at the University of New Hampshire that no one had looked at. And then I started to hear about audio recordings that were done with many of the people in my book from the 1970s. And I spent years trying to get access to them. And I did. And actually, they were in Virginia. In the end, they hadn't been transferred, and people in America can listen to them now. There's something called the Amelia Earhart Project, but I was the first biographer to listen to 200 hours of recordings. They weren't taken for a biography, they were taken by a man trying to solve the mystery of
Mm,
where Amelia Earhart
yes.
disappeared.
Yes. Well, let's get. Well, first of all, thank you for being such a wonderful journalist.
Thank you.
We don't have a lot of that in this day and age, so you're a rare bird, and we appreciate you. Let's get into the good stuff. So, George Putnam, did he love Amelia? Did she love him? What role did he play in her fame? Can you give us a little preview without spoiling
Sure.
the book?
Amelia Earhart, I like to say it's the first reality show because she comes on the scene in 1928. She becomes famous overnight, like an influencer. It's not because she's flown a plane across the Atlantic by herself. She is a passenger on
Mhm.
a plane called the Friendship. And she doesn't do the flying, but it is significant that a woman has made it across. 7 people have tried before and either died or had to get rescued at sea.
Mm.
The reason she was cast was because of a book deal. George Putnam was Charles Lindbergh's publisher for a book called We in 1927 when Lindbergh was the sensation and people were bored. They don't want any more books about a man crossing the Atlantic. How about a woman? But
Yes.
lady, that's how she gets famous. And he was married at that time to the Crayola crayon. Eris just gets a little juicy, but and he was besotted with this young woman. So that is the unexpected beginning of the story that this married man is chasing this woman that he is just besotted with, and he tries to get her to she's engaged. I mean, none of this is in the Scholastic book, guys, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's how we get Amelia Earhart. But what's amazing is that she did know how to fly.
Yes.
She was what I would call a hobby pilot. There weren't a lot of ways for women to make their way in aviation. They had to do stunt piloting. Many of the men got jobs because they had the World War I hours. So that was a way in. At that time, she was a social worker, and that would probably have been her path. And George really pursues her. At this time, we're still in the jazz age. 1928, the aviators are gods. What happens a year later? You have the Great Depression, the stock market crash. And what happens is Amelia loses her money. She made $1 million in 1928.
Wow.
And I mean, in a million,
Sure, that was a lot.
$1928.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but George loses his money. He's pushed out of his family firm. Amelia loses her money and they have each other. And what started as sort of an unexpected relationship turns into a marriage. And I would say it started from actual love, but then it turns into sort of a partnership. And I've been married for 30 years. My husband and I love each other, but sometimes we hate each other. I mean, that's what marriage looks like.
Of course.
But you stick together, you keep a partnership, you get through the highs and the lows. And I would say that anyone saying that she wasn't really married, I'm like, what does your marriage look like?
Right.
How did you get through the pandemic?
Yeah.
How did you get through the recession?
So it was kind of became maybe a business arrangement, would you
But
say?
it was a real marriage. I mean, Amelia was
Sure.
very fond of George.
Okay.
She knew what she was getting herself into.
Yeah.
It was eyes wide open. He was known as a P.T. Barnum of publishing.
Right.
He was a wheeler dealer, and he actually was not the nicest person in the world. I'm going to just reveal that right here. But it's very charming. If he thought that someone could help him, he would just put it on, and he put it on for Amelia. And he was fun. And if you're not on the other side of George Putnam, if you know what I mean. But what happens is that they are together, and he puts her on an excruciating lecture circuit. And that is how they're going to survive the Great Depression, not from her flying, but from the monetary revenue that comes from after these somewhat unsafe flights that were not particularly suited for Amelia's skills at every moment.
Do you think, Lori, that she was uncomfortable with some of the flying? That I don't want to say she was scared, but
I think that she needed more hours. I think she was like, you can't say that she's a bad pilot. Nobody could go across the Atlantic by themselves.
That's right.
And say a bad pilot. However, there were other women, many of them are in my book, who were much more revered within their own community, within the 99s, outside of the 99s.
Yeah.
Like Jackie Cochran, Staden, Eleanor Smith, and whoever he perceived as a threat to Amelia, George would try to hound them into ground.
Ooh.
I don't think that Amelia knew, but she might have. I don't know. That's something we can't quite tell. But she was ambitious, and Amelia Earhart wanted to fly. Partly, I think that because she wanted to bring women into the world of achievement. I think a lot of these other aviators who were much more technically gifted did not have that trait. They did not want to lift others up with them. They were really intent on these records, but by whatever means necessary. But Amelia wanted to show the world that women could do it too. And she was always bringing women up with her. And she was also promoting aviation. She was a big believer that aviation was the future. If she lived, she probably would have been connected to the space program, right?
Yes. So Lori, I'm going to stop you there just for I love this. We rise by lifting others. I'm going to stop you just for a second because we have to take a break. And we will be right back with Lori One Shapiro. Stay with us. We knew that she was a good enough pilot. There's some, I hate to say it, there's some men who say she wasn't a good pilot. But as you just said, to accomplish what she did, we know that she was a good pilot. Was her husband, George, ever worried about her?
I think that he was worried about her. But remember, the first time he's meeting her, he's sending 7 women had been lost. So from the very first connection, he's sending a young woman on a trip for a book deal. So you got to, and also part of the book shows how many other risks he was taking with other people's lives, including young kids that he set up as explorers that had their own book deals. I don't think he worried, but I don't think he was sort of like a fatalistic. Well, whatever happens, if she wants to do it. Um, but I think that Amelia Earhart was also aware of the risks that she was taking. It's not like she didn't know. So you can't put the blame on George and you can't put the blame on Amelia. It's really this connection between the two of them. Um, Sometimes some of the flights that she made, including the one in 1932 that she was most famous for, she was supposed to go to Paris and she ended up in Ireland in a cow fields. It was good enough. No one had crossed. She was the second person to cross the Atlantic solo. So, Lindbergh landed, boom, right in Paris. Amelia landed in Ireland, but she got a tremendous ticker tape parade as well. Again, that was her second parade in New York.
Interesting.
There was all about the spin too. Like if there were problems on the flight, you just eliminate that. You have to remember that Amelia's husband was also her manager and her promoter. So anything bad gets written out of the record. Some of the things that you find out about Amelia Earhart when you do research like this is that she didn't write her own books. She didn't write her own articles. There were ghostwriters. Why do we have to have that as part of the narrative? She did incredible things.
Oh, I didn't know she had ghostwriters. That's interesting.
Right. I mean, so that's the thing is the truth to me is far more interesting than a concocted narrative. And what you do when you do journalism is you have to triangulate the truth. Some people you could say go by the written record, but when it comes to the written record and George Putnam is involved, it's not so trustworthy. So what you do is you triangulate the truth from new archives, from recordings, from original documents, and I went all over. I went to the 99's museum in Oklahoma. I went to the Women's Air Museum in Cleveland. I did research there. I went to Newfoundland for a week and a half where Amelia Earhart left. And actually, I went to that house and the people that hosted her when she got fogged in 1928 and nobody really knew who she was, they hosted me as well. And I had lunch with them and they had a scrapbook of archives that no one had seen.
I don't know if you can reveal this or not, Lori. What was one of the most surprising things you learned about Amelia during your research? Can you share that?
Sure. I think that, when she is married to George, who's 10 years older than her, you see that there's ambition. She knows who he is. She's breaking in an engagement. She's deciding, I'm going to go through that sliding door. But she was actually had other relationships. On the tapes, I heard her sister talking about a gentleman that she was dating in the 20s. Some of the things that we think about Amelia Earhart, that she saved up for a sports car and went across the country and went to Boston. That car was bought by someone who's very much in love with her, who was in his 60s. That gets written out of the narrative. But is that, that's the way women went forward. She had ambition. She wanted to marry this man. Her parents did not. She was born in the Victorian era. Amelia Earhart, in her early 20s, still had to ask her parents for permission to marry. Other things I found out on the tape were relationships that she had. There were also women talking, like Louise Thaden, about her take on George Putnam. I mean, there's lots of nuances in the story, but that doesn't take away from the bravery of Amelia Earhart. And the biggest lesson I realize is no matter how much you walk away a little shocked from my book, you have to remember that Amelia Earhart was not going to inspire the millions of people, including the women going to the moon that I interviewed for this book, who hold Amelia Earhart as a hero, without a partnership and marriage with George Putnam. You might not like him at the end of the book, but you realize that Amelia was going down a path of social work at this point. She was a hobby pilot. Yes, she already knew how to fly, but she was now cast into a whole new world that she was not going to be part of unless she met George Putnam. So you get a messy history, but it's a good one. It's interesting, I think.
Yes, and destiny.
Absolutely. And today I just came on a plane That's partly because Amelia Earhart championed aviation during the Great Depression, convincing women to take flights. Maybe you're not going to fly across the Atlantic, but get on a plane, try it out. This is the future. This is how we're going to get around the world. So every time you go on a plane today, you could pretty much thank Amelia Earhart. She was a quite, Lindbergh was an interesting guy, had some issues, you might know, but Amelia Earhart was likable. She was the one out there as the ambassador of the air, not so much Lindbergh. And we fly in great deal because of Amelia's involvement with the aviation industry as an ambassador as well.
Absolutely. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to ask a few more things like, did you feel close to Amelia?
Absolutely. I'd love to answer.
Save it. I want to hear about it. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. We're back, everyone. Welcome back to Inside the Cockpit with Lori Gwen Shapiro, an incredible author, talking about her special book about Amelia Earhart. Lori, did you feel a connection, maybe a spiritual connection to Amelia while you were so involved in her life story?
Yes. I mean, I went into the story once I got the contract. I knew I was going to be spending a lot of time with her. And you really don't want to write a book about someone you dislike, right? Amelia and George are, in some ways, it's a double biography, but it really is a story about Amelia because without Amelia, there is no story. And I spent quite a bit of time looking into her life, looking at personal materials, reading letters. I mean, read millions of there's millions of things about Amelia Earhart. You have to choose what you're looking at. But I liked her. I kept thinking I would be friends with her. This is an inspiring woman. One of the things that's really interesting, you talked about the 99s before. Yes, she was the first president of the 99s, but she wasn't supposed to be the first president of the 99s. Louise Thaden was. Louise Thaden was the woman who won the Powder Puff Derby or the Women's Air Derby. But everyone knew that Amelia Earhart got people in the tent and they recruited her. They said, Amelia, it's your name that's going to help bring attention on women pilots. And she was brought into that job and she embraced it. And she wrote letters and she wrote, the 99s come from the 99 women that could fly.
That's right.
And she wrote personal letters and she got everyone on board. So it might not have been her idea to start that. She did want to start an organization, but she was into the camaraderie. She might have a competitor, but she didn't see people as enemies.
Right.
As long as you were a pilot, if you were a woman pilot, even better. But if you were a male pilot, she saw you as part of an aviation community. That's a nice person.
Yes.
And that's a lovely person. Now, if there's anything spicy that comes out, that's okay. We're grown-ups. We can handle it. She's not killing anyone.
Right.
She's not doing anything terrible. She just might be very ambitious in ways that you don't expect. But aren't men ambitious? Don't men take risks? Do we worry about the fact that the astronauts that in the early years were taking extraordinary risks? They decided to do that. And Amelia's attitude was that women should be able to take the same risks as men. Other women might be more trained, but Amelia really felt that she was pushing women forward. I think that sometimes you come across a character in aviation and they're pushing their own record forward. I think it was really a combination of the two with Amelia Earhart, which is why she was so loved by her fellow aviators. I did not hear anyone talk poorly about her on 200 hours of tapes.
Lori, good to know. We only have 2 minutes left. Two last questions. What do you think happened on that final flight? And what do you think Amelia would want everybody to know?
Amelia Earhart would want people to think about what she achieved more than how she disappeared. I'm going to probably get a million letters, but I don't think there's that much mystery on how Amelia Earhart disappeared. I don't know where the plane is, but I do think that she was warned about the dangers of this flight. She probably should have gotten Howland Island over first. There was an original way around that she was going and crashed, and she decided to flip the itinerary partly because of Putnam pushing her to make a a book deal for Christmas. But she decided to go herself. But I do think she ran out of gas, which I think most people in the Amelia Earhart world think. And I don't think she landed on an island. I think that the plane is probably going to be discovered one day at the bottom of the Pacific. But to me, the mystery of Amelia Earhart is not how she died, it's how she lived. What do you know about Amelia Earhart? Do you really know Amelia Earhart? I think that's what this book offers a reader, not just through my words, but through extraordinary photos that my photo researcher spent months on.
I can't wait to read it. I'm inspired. I loved Amelia before, and I love her even more now, thanks to you. So, 6% of the pilot population is female, and Amelia lives in the heart of those of us, and now she lives in your book. So thank you so much. We're going to grab your book. We can get it on Amazon. How about a plug for your book? Tell everybody again the title, where they can get it, and why it's different, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, it's The Aviator and the Showman, Amelia Earhart, George Putnam, and the Marriage That Made an American Icon. You can read it in hardcover, on Kindle, and Stephanie Powers, who's a pilot from Heart to Heart, and the girl from Uncle is actually the narrator of the audio version. So if you're a Heart to Heart fan, you want to check the audio version out.
I'm a Heart to Heart fan. Giving away my age here. Thank you so very much.
Pilot.
Yeah, and I forgot she was a pilot. Yes, I'm just so inspired, and this will inspire so many people. Best of luck to you. I know this is going to be it already is a huge success. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you for having me on.
It is our pleasure
to meet you.
Enjoy your book tour. And everybody,
thank
you so much for joining us. That's this edition of Inside the Cockpit. Hope you enjoyed it here on Queen City News Plus. I'm May K. Beeler. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.